Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Anuska Taylor. So great to have you here. So this week's video is all about, do you think your voice is just the way it is? And maybe you just think, well, my voice is just loud, quiet, breathy. I just mumble. I talk fast, I talk slow, speak really high, I speak really low. I don't have much expression. It's just the way it is. And I hear this all the time. And therefore, if that's what you think, you're not even going to try and do anything about it, are you really? You're not going to seek any help or guidance because you just think, well, that's just the way it is. But I'm here to tell you that it is not the way it is. You can absolutely create change if you want to do it enough. There's a little caveat there because it's not going to happen with me just giving you a quick tip. There has to be a level of commitment and consistency. But if you really want to create change in your voice and open it up to its full potential, you absolutely can. And in fact, I would argue that small shifts make a huge difference. The voice is highly adaptable to change. I also just want to say that when I talk about change, I don't mean trying to make you sound like someone else. I'm about you reaching the full potential and expression of your instrument. So whatever your accent, it's you finding maximum power, clarity, and expression with your accent, because all accents can be made clear and maximized and optimized. So there obviously are people out there that help you change your accent or modify your accent. That's not what I'm talking about in this video. But of course, if that's what you're looking for, then I'm not that coach, but there's plenty of people out there that do that kind of work. But I'm here to help you bring the most out of your unique voice. So I'm not trying to change you. So my role really as a voice coach is to help you realize your potential. And so you can really experience how good your voice is really meant to feel and sound. Because actually, when you are in touch with your true voice, which is truly free and expressive and powerful, that's when you become really engaging and magnetic and impactful as a speaker. So in most cases, most people don't have anything wrong with their voice, like the physical instrument itself works just fine. It's just you've never been taught how to use it. And you've got this belief perhaps that you can't do anything to change it. And you've never also potentially given yourself an opportunity to explore your voice, to explore the edges of pitch, of dynamics, of expression when you speak. So you just stay in this very narrow place when you speak, and then you think, that's it. Also, before I continue, I just want to preface this all by saying I'm not referring here to more serious voice issues. So, for example, if you had brain damage and your voice was severely impacted, I'm not talking about that because, of course, that's completely different. I'm talking about a healthy, functioning voice. And that's what most people have. They just don't realize it. The other thing, of course, is we know there are biological limitations. So, for example, a male larynx is bigger than a female larynx, whether you like it or not. I mean, it's just biology. Also, the vocal tract shape is going to give us different sounds, different qualities. But again, there's not much you can do about that. Your vocal tract shape is your vocal tract shape. Also, things like the size and shape of your skull and your jaw are also going to impact your voice. Again, I'm not talking about any of that because there's so many parts that you can shape and change that you don't need to worry about all the things that you can't change, because there's plenty of things that you can change. So I guess the more interesting question then is, why do people believe their voice is fixed? Or, well, it's just the way it is. I've always spoken like this. Well, I'm going to answer this from two perspectives. So from the kind of conscious perspective and the unconscious perspective. So first of all, from the conscious perspective, we consciously have this voice that we've had our entire life. We learned to speak by mimicking those around us growing up, hence where we get our accents from. And we learn how to pronounce words. We're not ever taught how to use the instrument. We're just taught how to pronounce words. So there's quite a big difference. And so we don't really question it. We're learning to speak from such a young age that we don't question any of it. It's just, well, this is the way it's always been. Consciously, I have this voice. this is how I sound, this is how people react to me, this is the accent I have, this is my perception of my voice quality and voice tone. So much like a fish in water, if a fish has only ever been in a fishbowl, it doesn't know that there's an ocean out there. It just thinks the fishbowl is it. And so you don't know what you don't know. And so it's just like, well, this is the voice that I've always had, so this is the way it is. Now, but if you're lucky, you might be one of these people like myself that's always wanting to learn and grow and expand and want to kind of know more about things. And so you might have found yourself intrigued. Well, maybe if I tried this, or maybe if I worked with that coach or read that book or watched that video. So you might be opening the doors of possibility. You're thinking, maybe my voice isn't as fixed as I thought, and I might just experiment a little bit. So there might be that sort of natural curiosity within you, but also, and probably more common in the people that work with me probably fall into the latter, is you have some kind of pain point attached to your voice. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean a physical pain, although it could be. It could be an emotional pain. You've heard your voice back on a recording, someone's made a comment about your voice, you're doing bigger and bigger speaking engagements, and you just don't feel like you've got any control over your voice. So you're very, very anxious. Or it could be a physical side, like vocal fatigue, voice loss, raspiness, croakiness, constriction, tension. It could be actual pain, so it depends. And they're the kinds of people that seek out this knowledge and this new awareness and new understanding of their voice. And then you might actually find someone like myself. So just to give you a little example, which is not voice related, but just to sort of show you how this kind of works, is about 10 years ago, I got incredibly sick and I ended up with bronchitis. I've never had bronchitis before, but very, very ill with bronchitis for months. And up until that point, I would have said that I had normalized lots of things. So I'd normalized headaches all the time. I'd normalized tummy ache when I ate certain foods. I'd normalized just being completely exhausted all the time and having to have cat naps quite regularly. But because I'd always had that, I just thought that was normal, like the fish in water. I didn't know that that wasn't normal. And actually there was another way. So I was kind of blessed in a way by getting bronchitis, because it really forced me to wake up and to say, okay, Anuska, there must be something else here. There's something going on. So anyway, to cut a very long story short, I ended up working with a nutritionist, sort of health coach at the time. She got me to completely change my diet. And now I've kind of brought certain foods back into my diet, but at the time she got me on a very, very clean diet. Now this isn't a video about diet or health or anything like that from that perspective, but the point of me telling you this story is, within a couple of months of doing what she had suggested, I mean, I won't go into it here, but I made quite a lot of changes in my lifestyle and the foods I was eating. I felt like a completely different person. And I couldn't believe I was the same person that a few months earlier had been completely exhausted, constant, headaches all the time, tummy ache all the time. I just thought, well, as I say, that's just normal. And it was mind-blowing to me. And it was literally night and day. And I will never forget it, because I felt incredible. My skin was glowing. I felt amazing. And I didn't realize it was possible for me, because I had really bought into that old sort of health issue, Anuska, as who I was. And that was just part of it. It's the same with the voice. We often don't realize what's possible and how amazing our voice is meant to feel, how amazing and open and free our voice is meant to sound. And we just assume that certain things are just the way they are. Or if we get a bit of fatigue, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, you will feel fatigue occasionally, but if it's becoming more and more of a problem, then there's something that you need to look at. Because actually our true voice, when we can release the muscles that aren't really required and engage and strengthen and get more flexibility and agility through the muscles we do need, that's when your voice becomes incredibly effortless and powerful. So that's the first one. So I've just used that example because I just remember that night and day moment within myself. And I really was that fish in water for probably about 10 years. It was probably a 10-year period that I felt this way. So it wasn't like a couple of weeks, because I'd been ignoring it for so long. So it got quite bad. But the other aspect is the unconscious aspect. And I have a particular interest in this with my Jungian coach hat on. So there is a payoff for your vocal habits, whatever you perceive them to be. But if you perceive them to be something that is limiting you in some way, that maybe you struggle to project your voice, or no one can really understand you, there's a lack of clarity, or there's a lack of dynamics and expression in your voice, there is a payoff. And it's probably an unconscious payoff, because the voice is just an expression of our conditioning. So that early childhood conditioning, where we were taught what was right, what was wrong, what was good, what was bad, what was acceptable, what's not acceptable, all of that goes into your voice. So things like speaking too fast, too slow, loud, quiet, being more engaging and animated and melodic when you speak versus very monotone and very sort of flat when you speak, all of that conditioning is going to be playing into that aspect of your voice. And the great news is, because it's been taught, whether it's implicit or explicit, you can rewrite it. You can just decide, actually, I might want to speak fast, but I also might want to speak slow, or I might want to speak at a normal kind of conversational pace, but I actually want it to be a choice. These vocal habits become a kind of protection, become a kind of defense mechanism, and a way to keep us safe in the world, to avoid being criticized or judged or ostracized or abandoned or unloved or whatever. So maybe if we grew up in a home where we weren't encouraged to express ourselves, we might have learned that it's actually safer for me really not to share too much, or we might pull our voice back. And I hear this a lot with people. So this is professionals. This isn't necessarily people that are just starting out in their career or don't really know what they're doing. These are people often in high-paying, high-level jobs who are pulling their voice back, but they don't realize that they're doing it because it's unconscious. And actually, it's only when I work with people like that and they experience what it's like to bring their voice out and forward, it's like, wow, I didn't know. Firstly, I didn't know I was pulling my voice back. Secondly, I didn't know actually what was possible. And that's what really this is all about. Because when you listen back to your voice, if you're hearing a kind of, it might, because you may not be able to feel it, but if you can hear that it's kind of almost sitting in the back of your throat, like you're talking to yourself a little bit more, it's like there's a little person in the back of your throat speaking, versus the voice is forward and out and open and expressive, then there is some payoff for your voice to be in that place. So you have to be willing to kind of do this deeper work as well, because if you just do the surface exercises of just, I mean, I can give you a million exercises on bringing the voice forward, but if you just do that and you don't look at this deeper conditioning because you think it's irrelevant, well, I'm not a child anymore, so I'm fine. And because I say it's very unconscious, but there's always a payoff. And so it isn't necessarily people in junior positions. I've seen this with people very senior positions that have no idea how much they're pulling their voice back. And then they get this experience of it being open and forward, and they're like, wow. But it's also a challenge. It's also challenging the conditioning. It's challenging the ego that has protected you in many, many ways, one of which is your voice. And in some way, you being more expressive and bringing your voice more out and forward is in some way a threat to this conditioned self. So we have to look at it, we have to explore it, and we have to bring it to conscious awareness. Most of the time, this conditioning is kind of formed when we're very young, so we don't remember it, and it won't make logical sense as an adult. So that's what's really important. So I hope this kind of makes sense. So what I would suggest that you do, if you are game, is to listen to a recording of your voice and just start to pay attention to, does my voice sound open? Does it sound free? Does it sound clear? Does it sound engaging and expressive and dynamic, or is it the opposite? And the more aware you are as well, start to pay attention to how it feels. Do you notice constriction in the back of your throat, in your neck? Does your jaw feel tight? Do you move your lips? Does your tongue do much when you speak? Does your chest rise, or are you breathing more deeply? Just start to pay attention, because that's going to tell you a lot about the freedom and openness that's in your voice. And ultimately, all of my work is about freeing your voice, regardless of accent, so that you can access the most powerful, expressive, dynamic, engaging voice. Now, if you are interested in exploring your voice and think, I have no idea, if I don't know what she's talking about, but maybe I need some help with this, it's actually World Voice Day next Friday. No, not next Friday. It's actually World Voice Day on the 16th of April. And to celebrate World Voice Day, which this year's theme I love is Your Voice Matters, which love that theme, I have a special invite for you if you are ready to really step into your full potential with your voice and you want to access your true voice, access this true full potential power and expression dynamics in your voice. So I have a special 4-week mini coaching package where you would work with me, private sessions online, so you can be anywhere in the world. And I will work with you very personally. We will look at your voice. It will be very practical, but we will also look at some of the conditioning that's holding some of your vocal habits in place so that you can bring them to awareness and actually start to work with it. And it's going to be a very practical sessions. You have access to me between the sessions, and you just have to purchase it by a week Friday, so the 14th of April. And it's a $9.97, so this is in British pounds, $9.97, which is an incredible investment to make, because your voice is so much more than your voice. You're actually going to learn a lot about yourself in the process, because your voice is just an outer expression of your inner world. So it's a kind of, it's so much more than voice training, I guess is what I'm saying. So if this resonates with you, I'm going to put the link below. I'll put the information below as well. You make the purchase, I will be in contact to arrange the first session with you. You just have to have started by the 30th of June, but you don't have to have finished by the 30th of June. But as I say, you do have to make the payment by next Friday, week on Friday. So any questions or comments, obviously, please post below. You can always also send me a message through my website, anuska-taylor.com, but all the links are below. So if that resonates, I would love to help you. It really is transformational work and you won't regret it. You will never regret doing this work on your voice, because it just affects every area of your life. I mean, without stating the obvious, we take our voice everywhere we go for the rest of our life. So thank you so much, and I will see you next week on next week's video.